it is my personal pleasure to introduce a very good personal friend of mine, a woman who has become the first Jewish woman to be a congresswoman representing the state of Florida in the United States House of Representatives, somebody who needs no introduction to us because she's part of our family. But as I ask her to join me here at the podium, Debbie, as we all have, has had a personal loss. Our good friend, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, you know, was part of an unbelievable event that took place this week. May we pray for her and for all of those families who lost theirs for a moment to only hope that this is a lesson that the world can learn from to make it a better place.
Thank you. Michael, thank you very much. Thank you. It's really good to be home. And Michael, thank you for your introduction. Norman, thank you for your words. Michael, the only correction that I will make to the end of your remarks is that Gabby Giffords, we did not lose. Gabby is still with us and is making progress every day. No, that's okay. But we do obviously need to think about the loss, and I'll have some comments during my remarks in a few minutes. Michael Adler is an absolutely incredible friend to me, but an incredible friend to our community in South Florida and to the Jewish community, and we owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude. His consistent and persistent leadership on behalf of Israel, on behalf of the causes that matter to the Jewish community are remarkable, and I just continue to, my admiration for you continues to grow every day, so thank you so much, and it is really a pleasure to be here at this incredible, groundbreaking initiative, bringing together scholars, advocates, and national and international leaders to combat the insidious campaign to delegitimize Israel. We are here today to learn about more about a subject that is close to all of our hearts, the state of Israel, and the pernicious attempts to denigrate our Jewish homeland. As you all know, the special friendship between the United States and Israel is a sacred bond that must be protected, and all of the organizations and individuals involved in this summit work tirelessly to guard that bond every day. Since 1948, when the U.S. became the first nation to recognize Israel, we have always stood by Israel's side as her strongest ally and friend. 60 years ago, President Truman began a long and rich tradition of trust and partnership with Israel that continues to thrive today. During that time, Israel has blossomed from desert sands into a shining example of economic progress and cultural diversity, all while under the threat of attack from hostile neighbors and a global delegitimization campaign. And unfortunately, that delegitimization campaign is alive and growing. We see it on college campuses here in America and abroad, in the media, and in the halls of the world's international organizations. It is not only Israel's neighbors who fail to recognize the legitimacy of the Jewish state. Unfortunately, Israel also faces vicious smear campaigns and anti-Semitic vitriol from a surprisingly wide array of members in global institutions like the United Nations. These actions are incredibly disturbing and a painful injustice to the state of Israel. It is outrageous that she faces attacks in the form of denied recognition from so many other sovereign nations. As a member of Congress, I have worked closely with the Task Force on Israel at the UN to combat these deleterious efforts. There are so many countries, allies of the United States, that have been swayed through falsehoods to oppose Israel. There is no reason for countries like Trinidad and Tobago, Thailand, or Uganda to support anti-Israel resolutions, and I have told their leaders that personally and asked them to change their votes. We cannot stand by. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We cannot stand by and accept Israel's prohibition from the UN Security Council, nor its pariah status in the community of nations. That is why Congress must stay involved. And we have had an impact. Congressional support was instrumental in Israel's recent acceptance to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. As an industrious, innovative, startup nation, Israel has so much to share with the world. be it through medicine, agriculture, or clean energy technology. It is vital that we in the United States Congress continue to advocate loudly at home and abroad for Israel, our ally and friend. That is why I led, thank you. That is why I led a congressional delegation trip to Israel last year with a number of my colleagues. I led this delegation trip so that other members of Congress who have not yet been to Israel could understand the importance of the Jewish state as well as the threats she faces. I am so proud that the U.S. government has always led the way on this issue, and as long as I'm a member of Congress, I promise that I will always make sure that we will. Thank you. Thank you. Now, as you know, Washington has been quite polarized lately, and there are many divisive issues in front of the United States Congress. But when it comes to our support for Israel, we are unified and we work arm in arm. Thank you. I'm so proud to share in that tradition as a representative in Washington and believe that the most recently completed 111th Congress was the most pro-Israel Congress in American history. Thank you. Since coming into office, President Obama has led the way on many of these issues, standing firmly at Israel's side, supporting her security, and paving the road toward peace. To exemplify this point, over the past 2 years, the Congress and the administration have supported billions of dollars in U.S. aid to Israel, funding projects to ensure Israel's safety and safeguarding Israel's qualitative military edge over her neighbors. This is obviously of increasing concern as Hezbollah, a sworn enemy of the Jewish state, has forced the collapse of the Lebanese government. It is dangerous and completely unacceptable for a terrorist organization like Hezbollah to wield such control in the land located just over Israel's border. To put it simply, we must continue to support Israel's safety and security. Thank you. This past year, Congress passed $3 billion in aid to Israel and foreign military financing, which is the full amount requested by the administration. Thank you. Thank you. This is a very strong funding level that clearly demonstrates our steadfast support for Israel. Furthermore, we passed an additional $205 million in defense aid to Israel for the Iron Dome technology, which will serve as a powerful countermeasure to the rocket attacks hitting Israel on its northern and southern borders. Thank you. Recognizing the grave existential threat that a nuclear Iran poses to both Israel and the United States, Congress also has passed tough and effective sanctions like the Comprehensive Iran Sanctions Accountability and Divestment Act, of which I was a proud co-sponsor. Thank you. And the hard work of President Obama succeeded in bringing China and Russia to the table to sign United Nations sanctions against Iran that have already prevented a major Russian weapons sale from occurring. Thank you. To be sure, Israel faces numerous direct threats to its survival, from Iran's nuclear program to the rocket attacks from Hezbollah and Hamas, to diplomatic efforts to delegitimize its very existence at the United Nations, and of course the ever-lurking threat of growing global anti-Semitism. But in the midst of these direct challenges, Israel is facing a new, more complicated threat. As you probably know, several countries have pledged to support the unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state at the United Nations. This is a dangerous trend that the United States Congress and the Obama administration have committed to oppose. Thank you. Let me be clear. I do believe that we should continue to support a peaceful two-state solution, resulting in safe, secure, and prosperous Israeli and Palestinian people living side by side. Thank you. Israel's character as a Jewish democracy and maintaining our historic homeland absolutely depend upon it. However, this must come out of a direct, peaceful, bilateral negotiations that are agreed to by both sides. It will only be through the commitment of both sides' leadership and people that these states will ever thrive as neighbors. It is imperative that the Palestinian Authority recognize the Jewish state of Israel and that both sides once again return to the negotiating table. Thank you. In the meantime, any provocative unilateral actions by either side will make successful negotiations less likely and lasting peace tougher to achieve. But in these challenging times, we must continue to be optimistic about the resolution of this conflict. Israel's security and prosperity depend upon it. You know, it's been a difficult few months for the Jewish state, from the peace talks in abeyance to the threat of a unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state to the utter destruction of the fire in Carmel during Hanukkah. In the wake of this conflagration, our hearts and prayers have gone out to the victims' families and all the brave emergency teams who helped to battle the fire and continue the relief effort. We're all proud that the United States has truly been at the forefront of that effort, with the Obama administration and USAID working side by side with the Israelis to stop the flames and begin the recovery. But what has been most encouraging in the aftermath of this fire is the speed and generosity with which the international community has come to Israel's aid. Thank you. Beyond the help of traditional allies like the United States, we saw the unexpected contributions and assistance from countries whose relationship with Israel is a bit more tenuous. Despite the strain in Israel's relationship with Turkey since the Gaza flotilla incident last year, Turkey immediately sent helicopters and firefighters along with support crews from other neighboring Arab countries to help. Thank you. I think that deserves applause, too. We must see the bright and positive sign of the help from Palestinian Authority Mahmoud Abbas and Prime Minister Salam Fayyad, which they offered without hesitation.